Assalamualaikum, distinguished panel members, esteemed colleagues, and attendees of the I Speak Series 2 International Graduate Colloquium 2025. My name is AMNI SYAHIRAH, and it's a privilege to present my research today. The focus of this presentation is for the assessment of research project presentation and to share insights within this esteemed colloquium, my research, which aims to look into the impact of intermittent fasting on mental abilities among UITM Seremban students. Intermittent fasting, IF, is popular among students for its health benefits. However, its effects on mental functions are still uncertain. Cognitive skills like focus and memory are essential for academic performance. So, this study aims to explore how IF may impact these abilities. University students often face academic pressure from exams, assignments, and co-curricular activities. To cope with these demands, mental abilities and focus are essential. Although intermittent fasting is common among students, its effect on cognitive function remain unclear. There is still limited data on how fasting influences focus and brain speed. This study aims to address that gap, especially students who practice IF. The purpose of this study is to explore how IF affects brain function among students. It focuses on key mental skills like attention, processing speed, which are crucial for effective learning and academic success. Ultimately, the aim is to find out whether IF helps or hinders cognitive performance. This study has four main objectives. First, to assess how IF affects students' concentration using the Stroop test. Second, to examine the relationships between IF and mental control. Third, to measure its impact on processing speed and mental sharpness. And lastly, to compare the mental performance of fasting and non-fasting students group. First, I believe fasting would affect students' focus level. Second, I expected fasting might slow down their processing speed. Third, I thought fasting would change learning ability. Fourth, I believe Stroop test result would differ between both groups. But after testing, the second hypothesis was not supported. Fasting students are actually perform better than non-fasting students. This study helps students understand how IF may influence their thinking skills. It can also improve how they manage stress, stay focused, and handle daily academic tasks. These findings may guide students in planning better fasting routines to support academic performance. In addition, this research contributes to assisting study on fasting and mental health and may be useful for lecturers and counselors in supporting students' well-being. This study has a few limitations and delimitations. First, the small sample size and reliance on self-reported data may affect the accuracy of the results. Second, external factors such as sleep quality and stress levels were not fully controlled. Lastly, the study focused only on UITM Seremban students and used the Stroop test as the sole measurement tool. Previous studies suggest that IF may improve memory and overall brain health. Some research found better focus with short-term fasting, while others reported no significant effects. These mixed results often depend on factors like fasting style, duration, and individual differences. Summary of literature review. IF may improve brain health, focus, and memory in some cases. According to Elkert et al., fasting affects brain chemicals like BD and F. O'Leary et al. Found short fasting helps memory, but long fasting may reduce flexibility. Effects vary depending on the fasting duration and calorie intake. These highlight the need for proper fasting strategies for cognitive benefits. I used a quasi-experimental design for this study. It compares fasting and non-fasting students without random assignment. This method suits real-life settings like university environments. It allows me to explore IF effects in a practical and natural way. I used convenience sampling to select UITM Seremban students. Participants were either already fasting or agreed to take part. I applied t-test to compare results between groups. The effect size used was 0.75 with a significance level of 0.05. The study had 80% power of using a two-tailed test for accuracy. I had selected UITM Seremban students aged 18 to 25 joined the study. Fasting group included those doing 16 to 8 IF or willing to follow. Control group did not practice fasting. All took the Stroop test to access focus and speed. Some were excluded based on health or irregular fasting habits. Reliability of Stroop test. The Stroop test is a simple and reliable way to check focus and speeds. It shows words like red in the different ink color, for example blue. Participant must say the ink color, not the word, which tests attention. Fasting is not a test, but we can still measure its effects on the brain. Even with different fasting habits, the Stroop test gives steady results. A study by Madsen in 2018 also confirmed this reliability. Procedure of intervention. Students in the fasting group follow the 16 to 8 plan, fasting for 16 hours and eating within 8 hours, eating from 12 to 8 or 2 to 9. This routine lasted for 4 weeks. Stroop tests were done twice a week, one before eating and once after eating. I reminded fasting students of their schedule, while non-fasting students still took both tests to keep the results fair. Next, we move to the flowchart. All participants were UITM Seremban students and the study lasted 1 month. Tests were done at the same time each day in a quiet, distraction-free room. I got ethical approval and students gave consent to join. Before testing, I reminded them to avoid caffeine and stress. After each test, I checked how they felt and noted any feedback. I also made sure there were no interruptions during the test. I used both descriptive and inferential statistics to analyze the data. Descriptive statistics were used to summarize participants' background and fasting details. Paired t-tests were used to compare performance before and after eating within each group. Independent t-tests were used to compare the fasting group with the non-fasting group. A two-tailed test with 0.05 significance level was used to check if the differences were meaningful. A total of 16 students completed both sessions, and there was no missing data. In the first session, the average score was 97.4, and it slightly increased to 97.8. In the second session, the lowest score was 94.2 in the first session and 95.1 in the second session. The highest score was 100 in both sessions. This shows that most students performed very well overall. The results were normally distributed, which means the data is reliable and valid. This slide shows the results for the fasting group across two test sessions. During the fasting window, the average score was 97.8 with a standard deviation of 1.16. After eating, the average was 97.7 with a standard deviation of 1.27, almost the same. This means their performance stayed stable before and after eating. The Shapiro week test showed the data was normally distributed with a p-value of 0.84. The QQ plots also showed a normal pattern with no major issues. Overall, the results suggest consistent mental performance at both time points. This supports Objective 1 and Objective 2. IF did not negatively affect attention or processing speed. I used a paired sample t-test to compare scores before and after eating in the both group. This test was for Objective 1 and 2 to see the effect of fasting on attention and mental ability. The result was T with degree of freedom 7 equals 0.189 with a p-value of 0.85. Since the p-value is above 0.05, the result is not significant. The average score during fasting was slightly higher, but the difference was very small and not meaningful. This means IF did not affect focus or performance. In short, students did well in the both sessions. I used an independent t-test to compare fasting and non-fasting groups. First session, T with degrees of freedom 14 equals to 0.83. P-value equals to 0.41. Second session, T with degrees of freedom 14 equals to negative 0.31, p-value 0.75. Both p-values are above 0.05, so no significant difference. Fasting students had slightly better score, but not statistically proven. Both groups performed well with no negative effect from fasting. This plot shows the average test score for both groups. The fasting group had slightly higher result in both sessions, but the difference is not significant as shown by the t-test. Overall, both groups stayed consistent and focused during the test. Let's break down the finding based on my 4 research objectives. First objective, concentration using the Stroop test. The fasting group showed high and stable accuracy every week. Their focus stayed consistent across all sessions. This suggests IF didn't reduce their concentration levels. Second objective, processing speed and mental abilities. No significance different before and after eating. Participants performed well in both sessions, so IF didn't negatively affect mental sharpness or speed. Third objective, cognitive control. The fasting group had slightly higher accuracy, especially in the later weeks. Although not statistically significant, it may point to better self-regulation. This shows a possible positive link between fasting and mental control. And the last objective, comparison between groups. The fasting group had better average scores than the non-fasting group. However, the difference wasn't statistically significant, so while fasting may offer some benefit, more research is needed to confirm it. As an example, it more larger sample size. Intermittent fasting had a positive short-term impact on mental performance. Fasting students maintained good focus and thinking speed. No significant harm to cognitive ability was found. These findings support IF as a realistic, effective approach for students managing academic and personal demands.